if you pour, let's say, $159 million into a brand new 281-unit residential complex
Right.
in almost any major city on Earth, really, the objective is usually incredibly straightforward.
Oh, absolutely. You want to extract as much profit as humanly possible.
Exactly. You build luxury amenities, you market to, the highest earners.
Yeah, the people who can actually afford it.
And you set the rent at the absolute ceiling of what the market can bear.
Always.
But today, we're looking at a massive $159 million development in Montreal that is explicitly designed to do, well, the exact opposite.
It's completely flipping the script.
It really is.
Yeah.
So welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to examine a concrete blueprint for tackling the housing crisis that actually, manages to bring everyone to the table.
And crucially, doing it without displacing the very people it's supposed to help.
Yes, exactly. But before we get into it, I need to do a little housekeeping. This publication comes from wikiresidence.ca and infodrone.ca and is available there in text and audio formats.
Perfect. Because before we pull apart the mechanics of how they are actually pulling this off, we really should establish where our information is coming from today.
For sure. Okay, let's unpack this. We are looking at the Angélique Latimer project.
Right.
And this is taking shape in the Villeray Saint-Michel Parc-Extension borough of Montreal.
Which is a mouthful, but a very important area.
Yeah, and for those tuning in who might not know the granular details of Montreal real estate, this is a neighborhood wrestling with some intense systemic housing pressures.
Oh, yeah. Gentrification, massive tenant precarity, the whole 9 yards.
Right. So give us the broad strokes here.
Well, taking a 30,000-foot view, this development is not simply about adding inventory to a strained market.
Like just slapping down another condo tower.
Exactly. It's not that at all. It is functioning as a live case study in social innovation.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, the project is engineered to combat housing insecurity in one of Montreal's most densely populated areas by entirely rewriting the underlying financial and, well, social architecture of how affordable housing gets built.
I mean, that sounds huge, but let's bring that down to ground level for a second. We are talking about a specific plot of land on Saint-Michel Boulevard.
Right, which is a vital commercial and residential artery.
Yeah. And the project involves 281 affordable housing units. But the detail that really changes the paradigm here, I think, is who is actually holding the blueprint.
Yeah, that's the kicker.
The driving force is the Société d'Habitation des Communautés Noires, or the SHCN.
Which fundamentally shifts the motivation behind the whole thing.
Because it's not a corporation.
Exactly. You have a community sector organization acting as the primary developer on a 9-figure real estate project.
A 9-figure project? That's just wild to me. And we saw the ceremonial kickoff for the groundbreaking, right?
Right.
Just last Friday?
Yeah, last Friday.
And it wasn't just, a few local advocates out there with golden shovels for a photo op. The sources note high-ranking dignitaries were there.
Very high-ranking.
Specifically, the Federal Minister of Housing and Infrastructure, Gregor Robertson.
Right, which signals a massive level of institutional backing for a community-led initiative. You don't get the federal minister out there unless the government is heavily invested.
Yeah, literally and figuratively. And the stated design goals of the SHCN for this building are, quote, sustainable urban integration, maximizing energy efficiency, and heavily prioritizing tenant quality of life.
Which sound great on paper.
They do, but I'm going to push back on those pillars a bit.
Okay, go for it.
Because sustainable urban integration, I mean, come on. That is one of those buzzwords that just makes my eyes glaze over.
Oh, totally. It's usually just corporate speak.
Right. When a standard top-down corporate developer uses that phrase, it usually translates to, like, a green roof that tenants aren't even allowed to step on.
Yeah, or a really shiny, energy-efficient lobby that's just designed to justify a premium price tag on the rent.
Exactly. So what does a phrase like that actually mean in practice when a community group like the SHCN is the one calling the shots?
Well, it means the sustainability isn't a marketing feature, it's a mechanism for survival.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
So for a private developer, an energy-efficient HVAC system or, say, superior thermal insulation, that's a way to claim LED certification, right?
Right, so they can charge more per square foot.
Exactly. But for the SHCN, maximizing energy efficiency is about permanently lowering the baseline operational expenditures of the building itself.
Oh, I see, because the margins are so tight.
Exactly. When you are catering to marginalized residents who are stretching every single dollar, you cannot afford wild fluctuations in winter heating costs.
Yeah, especially not in a Montreal winter.
Right. The building is physically designed to operate on low margins.
Which strips away all that luxury aesthetic and just replaces it with functional endurance.
Precisely. The integration is about making sure the building doesn't financially bleed the people living inside it.
That makes a lot of sense. But, capital stacks and noble community goals, they only really matter if the underlying math actually works.
And it's complicated math.
Yeah, because a $159 million price tag, that requires an immense amount of leverage.
It requires a financial structure that completely bypasses the traditional private lending market, actually. Which brings us to the multilateral funding package outlined in the sources.
Yeah, let's break down the actual numbers for you listening, because looking at this capital stack is just staggering.
It really is a feat of engineering on its own.
So the total cost is $159 million.
Right.
And the federal government, through the Affordable Housing Fund, is carrying the heaviest load here. They are injecting $86 million.
$76 million.
Yeah. And the sources specify this comes via a mix of things: contributions, forgivable loans, and low-interest loans.
Which is key. That federal tier alone is doing the lion's share of the risk mitigation for the whole project.
Okay, so that's the feds. Then you layer in the government of Quebec.
Right.
Through the PHAQ, the Affordable Housing Program, they are providing $51.8 million in direct funding.
Just direct cash.
Yep. Then the City of Montreal is contributing a $20 million municipal grant.
Also basically free money.
Right. And finally, rounding out the capital stack, the Fonds Immobilier de Solidarité, FTQ, is putting in a $10.9 million institutional investment.
So what does this all mean? We are essentially looking at a four-tiered funding model.
And that is exactly where I have to play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay, let's hear.
We are talking about constructing one single residential complex, right? 281 units.
Right.
And you have three distinct levels of government: federal, provincial, and municipal, plus a labor funds investment arm.
Yes, all at the same table.
Doesn't layering that much bureaucracy just create a four-headed monster? I mean, we hear constantly that red tape and overlapping jurisdictions are the exact reasons nothing ever gets built fast enough during a housing crisis.
Oh, you hear it all the time.
Right. So how does adding four different institutional masters actually help?
Well, on the surface, it does seem counterintuitive to invite that much bureaucratic friction.
Yeah.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture of debt servicing, this complex multilateral approach is literally the only way the math functions.
Really?
Yeah. Think of this funding package not as a giant pile of money, but as a financial levy.
Okay. A financial levy against what exactly? The commercial debt market.
Precisely. If a traditional private developer wants to build a $159 million complex, what do?
They go to a bank.
Right. They secure massive commercial loans. Let's say interest rates are floating around, 5 or 6% right now, just to service that debt. Literally, just to pay the bank its interest every month, without even touching the principal. The developer has to generate an astronomical amount of revenue.
Right. The carrying costs are huge.
Huge. That means they have to charge $3,000, maybe $4,000 a month for a basic two-bedroom apartment.
So the rent is essentially just the tenant paying off the developer's high-interest mortgage.
Exactly. But the Angélique Latimer project's entire mission is affordability. They absolutely cannot charge those rents.
So how do you pay for a $159 million building without charging luxury rents?
You artificially eliminate the debt. That $20 million municipal grant, that is free and clear money.
Right. No interest on that.
The $51.8 million from Quebec, direct funding, no interest.
Okay.
The federal forgivable loans. If the building maintains its affordability mandates over time, that debt just evaporates. So by aggressively stacking these grants and low-interest instruments, the SHCN effectively builds a nine-figure asset without taking on a suffocating commercial mortgage.
That makes perfect sense. They aren't trying to manage the debt. They're engineering the project so the debt never even exists in the first place.
Exactly.
And the lower the debt service, the lower the required operating revenue, which means the rent can actually stay affordable.
Right. And that mechanism is the crucial bridge to understanding the microeconomics of what happens when a family actually moves in.
How so?
Well, the macro-level funding directly subsidizes the micro-level reality for the tenants.
Okay, let's actually bring this down to the reality of the tenant, because the sources highlight an incredible metric regarding affordability here.
Yes, the rent supplement program.
Right. So out of the 281 units, 161 of these future households are going to be integrated into the Société d'habitation du Québec's rent supplement program, which they call the PSL.
And this is where the abstract concept of, affordable housing becomes a very tangible lifeline for specific families.
For sure, the sources outline the parameters of this program, and it is a massive intervention.
Oh, it's life-changing.
For those 161 families who are heavily drawn from low-income and marginalized demographics, by the way, their monthly housing cost is permanently capped at 25% of their income.
25%.
Yeah.
Capping housing costs at a quarter of a household's income is a metric that most urban planners consider the absolute gold standard for financial stability.
Right.
Yet it is almost non-existent in the private market today.
Yeah, good luck finding that anywhere. But wait, let's explore the mechanics of that cap for a second.
Sure.
If a household is surviving on, say, a minimum wage income or perhaps disability benefits,
Which is very common.
25% of that income might only be $300 or $400 a month.
Right.
Even with a debt-free building, the SHCN still has to pay for insurance, property maintenance, water, heating, and administrative staff.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course. The lights have to stay on.
So how does the building remain solvent if the tenants are paying drastically below market rate? Does the SHCN just swallow that financial loss every month?
Right.
Because they'd go bankrupt.
No. And this is the brilliance of the rent supplement program, the PSL. The building does not take a loss, which is absolutely critical for the project's long-term survival.
Okay, so how does it work?
The mechanism works like this. The SHCN determines the actual baseline cost to operate that specific unit.
Okay.
The tenant pays exactly 25% of their income toward that cost.
Right.
Then the SHQ, the Provincial Housing Authority, steps in and subsidizes the remainder directly to the building's operating fund.
Ah, so the government makes the building whole.
Exactly. The tenant is shielded from the actual operating cost, but the nonprofit developer still gets the revenue required to keep the lights on and maintain the property.
It creates a closed loop of financial stability.
It does. The building doesn't fall into disrepair because it's starved of operational revenue, and the tenant doesn't face eviction because they missed a sudden rent hike.
Here's where it gets really interesting for the families actually holding these leases. I want you to imagine your own household budget right now.
Oh, man.
Right. In major metropolitan areas, working class and even middle class residents are routinely funneling 40, 50, sometimes 60% of their net income just into housing.
It's completely unsustainable.
It is. Capping that expense at 25% operates as a massive permanent pressure valve. It is mathematically equivalent to giving these families a substantial life-changing raise.
It is. And we have to look at what that transition does sociologically, too.
Yeah.
Moving from spending 60% of your income on rent down to 25% frees up an enormous amount of trapped capital.
Right. Capital that was just going straight to a landlord.
Exactly. When a household is severely rent-burdened, they are trapped in a state of financial paralysis. You are in constant triage.
Just putting out fires.
Yeah. You delay dental work, you skip meals. You absolutely cannot build an emergency fund.
You are effectively just working to pay the landlord with zero discretionary income left over.
Exactly. So by instituting this cap, you allow a household to shift from survival mode to planning mode.
That's a great way to put it. Planning mode.
Because suddenly, the newly freed capital gets diverted into critical avenues. It goes towards savings, education, preventative health care, better nutrition.
Buying your kid new shoes when they actually need them.
Right. And over time, that completely alters a family's socioeconomic trajectory. A child in one of those 161 units is growing up in a fundamentally different stress environment than they would be in the private market.
It breaks the cycle of generational poverty by addressing the largest, most immovable expense on the ledger.
It's foundational.
But, the impact of a development this size doesn't stop at the front doors of the building.
No, not at all.
Dropping a $159 million project onto a specific block generates a massive ripple effect outward, right onto Saint-Michel Boulevard.
Oh, the macroeconomic multiplier effect of large-scale construction is so often overlooked in these social projects.
The sources actually make a point to highlight these economic spin-offs. The construction phase alone is projected to support hundreds of direct and indirect jobs in the building sector over a 2-year period.
Hundreds of jobs.
Yeah. You have tradespeople, suppliers, architects, logistics coordinators, all drawing paychecks funded by this capital stack.
Right, and that capital is flowing through the local economy long before the first tenant even signs a lease.
Which brings up a fascinating point about the timeline we are looking at here. The sources noted that the detailed work schedule followed standard industry phases, but delivery was anticipated by late 2025 or early 2026.
Right, that was the projection when the intergovernmental funding was initially solidified, yes.
Yeah, so the sources anticipated delivery right around now, which means as we sit here in July 2026, we are actively watching this transition from a financial spreadsheet into a living, breathing neighborhood.
It's happening as we speak.
Right. The scaffolding is coming down, the final inspections are happening, families are literally moving in.
Yep.
But injecting nearly 300 new households onto one vital artery is a massive shock to a local ecosystem. So how does an influx of that scale reshape the daily economic rhythm of Saint-Michel Boulevard?
Well, this raises an important question about our traditional assumptions regarding urban density.
Okay, what do you mean?
In city planning, density is frequently framed as a burden.
Right. Oh, sure. Traffic, noise.
Yeah, it conjures images of overcrowded transit, strained public services, congested sidewalks. But the Angélique Latimer project demonstrates density as a catalyst for revitalization. And the key factor here is the financial health of the people moving in.
Ah, because of the 25% rent cap.
Exactly. These aren't just bodies taking up space, they are active consumers. In a traditional private development, you might have 300 households moving in who are so completely house poor from paying exorbitant rent that they have zero disposable income.
Yeah, they stay in their apartments, cook cheap meals, and avoid local commerce because they literally can't afford a cup of coffee.
Exactly. But the SHCN has engineered the opposite scenario here.
They are dropping 300 households into the neighborhood who explicitly have discretionary income.
Yes. Because their housing costs are capped and heavily subsidized, they actually possess the capital to participate in the neighborhood economy.
That makes total sense.
They are going to the local independent pharmacies on Saint-Michel Boulevard, the neighborhood grocery stores, the hardware stores, the cafes.
Right, they have breathing room.
The project essentially creates a captive, financially stable customer base for local entrepreneurs.
It creates a symbiotic loop. The social safety net provided by the housing actually fuels the economic engine of the surrounding commercial district. The businesses thrive because the residents aren't being bled dry by their rent.
Which is exactly why the sources identify this project as a model for inclusive urban development across Quebec.
It's a proof of concept.
It decisively proves that social good and economic vitality are not competing interests. When they're structured correctly, they compound upon one another.
Yeah.
You solve an acute housing shortage for marginalized communities while simultaneously injecting a massive stimulus into local trades and commerce.
It forces us to completely reevaluate what is possible when the community sector, rather than, say, a corporate board, takes the lead on urban development.
Totally.
So to bring all these threads together from today's deep dive, we started by examining a historic $159 million financial levy.
A very complex levy.
Right. A package that required the federal, provincial, and municipal governments to align their funding to effectively eliminate the burden of commercial debt.
Which is a rare and incredibly effective alignment of public capital. You don't see it often.
Yeah. And that alignment empowered the Société d'habitation des communautés noires to act as a major developer, building 281 sustainable units. We then traced how that massive capital stack directly subsidizes the microeconomics of the tenants, right?
Yeah.
Allowing 161 households to utilize the rent supplement program and permanently cap their rent at 25% of their income.
Transitioning those families from survival mode to active economic participation, which, as we just discussed, in turn dynamizes the local business ecosystem of Saint-Michel.
It's incredible. And the sources explicitly call this a model to be replicated, which leaves us with a final, highly provocative thread to pull on.
Yeah, because if we accept that this model works, if a community-led, heavily subsidized framework successfully houses marginalized populations, eliminates rent burden, and revitalizes a neighborhood's economy without relying on profit-driven landlords, what happens to the traditional private real estate market?
I mean, that is the $159 million question, isn't it?
Right, it really is.
Yeah.
If the community sector demonstrates they can build superior, more sustainable, and infinitely more affordable housing by creatively leveraging government partnerships, Will private developers eventually be forced to adopt these socially innovative models just to secure space and relevance in densely populated cities?
That's a fascinating thought.
Or will they find themselves completely outmaneuvered by nonprofits who are unburdened by the need to extract maximum shareholder value?
It really makes you wonder if the era of the traditional corporate mega developer having a monopoly on city building is starting to crack.
It might be.
The Angélique Latimer project proves that a concrete blueprint isn't just about load-bearing walls and steel girders. When you engineer the finances correctly, you can construct a building that actually lifts up the people living inside it, rather than just extracting their wealth.
It's a brilliant piece of social architecture.
It really is. And as these hundreds of families settle into Saint-Michel this summer, we will absolutely be watching to see how this model ripples outward. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the structures around you, keep exploring, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for your attention. You can find all our articles, columns, and special editions in audio and text formats. Our content is accessible on mobile, tablet, computer, and television via wikiresidence.ca. Please feel free to share your comments and suggestions with us.